farm list. This is free data. So in your market, I just wanted to give you an example that one of the lines, the yellow line, did not come out, but they're basically two concentric circles, and I kind of gave you the logic behind it. These are just big blocks of data you can get from a title company. And the thing that I figured out was farm lists just show all these properties, and you can limit your property zone to your particular area. And the way you can tell more often than not if they're owner occupied is limit the mailing address to some zone smaller than where the buildings are. Because what I figured out was it was reasonable to expect that they would commute some distance, but beyond that, they were probably investor property. So if the mailing address, for instance, if the zip code is out in Chicago and the building is in my town, it's probably not owner occupied. But when you look at something like this, you can figure out ways to get all this free data, especially when we look at the internet, and things that you can try. So I just wanted to throw that up as an example. Let's go ahead and get the borrower staging. Oh, before I do that, yeah, that's actually behind the farm lists. I just want to show you some output of these different faxes for marketing purposes. We're going to talk about the fax piece in more detail as you go through here. These are just different things that you can do when you're marketing to influencers or your PBMs or branch managers, ways to keep them updated. These are all things from your desktop. Speaking of this flyer, I call this my maximum cheese flyer here because what happened was it is very cheesy. Well, let me give you an example. I actually sent these out. When I was on vacation, I was telling you the story about marketing when you're on vacation. I had this campaign that I thought up because I had done all the analysis and access, and I knew that I had some people that were real likely borrowers from us. So I said, okay, first what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this presence thing. I'm going to send my flyer. So I scanned it, and I sent my flyer out, and then some product information. So I'm going through my voicemails when I get back, and there's all these people really interested in what I had to say, except then the brokers that I knew or people in the market would call and go, did you have extra teeth put in your head for that picture? And so be careful when you send that kind of stuff out because you're going to eat some crow as well. Okay, borrower staging. This, to me, may be the biggest piece of this because borrower staging, when I talk about desktop faxing, you can think about how it relates to your marketing efforts, and really the imagination is the only limit. Batching for later in the evening, most of the desktop faxing that you're going to be looking at will tie up your computer for that long when you send a fax because it runs through this whole thing. But what you can do is you can schedule the fax to go later in the evening so that if a borrower wants to meet with me next week and I know that I've got some time but I need to get them an application package, what I can do is say, hey, just give me your fax number. And I can put it in the computer, and then when I schedule and attach all the applications to it, I can just say, send this tonight. And I'm going to get to some screen prints and show you that. And that's also a different way to distribute applications, which is right from your desktop. So that you don't have to do the mail thing. You don't have to deliver things. The idea behind staging is to take your clients as far into the process as you can before you actually put yourself with them. That way you're spending less time going back and forth. I mean, that's the whole idea behind leverage. And it's also kind of the whoops, I need a couple things. When you need a few items from someone, it's a really good way in the off hours to send it over to the client and say, you know, I just need a couple things from you to move this thing along. So I'm going to show you some examples of that. To do faxing from your desktop? Yeah. Yeah, everyone's laptop. Who does not have a laptop? You don't have a, what area are you in? In Orange? Yeah, I guess Todd's working on that. Everyone will have laptops. I mean, I can say that without compromising anything. We have to have laptops. It's real hard to not work that way anymore. You'll have a laptop, and you'll be able to fax. I think you can use land fax right now, so this probably does apply, but you will at some point. I know he's working on it. This is an example, if you go to the very first one, of what the send dialog looks like. When you go to print in, say, a Word document, you'll notice the underlying document here is that bank comparison that I showed you, that real dollar value letter. What you'll want to do is go in and switch the printer to WinFax if it's not already in WinFax. And it's just like when you go into printer setup, select WinFax, say OK, it's your default printer. So whenever you click on print, it's going to bring up the WinFax send dialog, which looks like this, which is on the next page of your binder. In the send dialog is where you put in everyone you want to send it to. So over here you can have groups of 1,000 people if you want to. It'll just take a long time to fax them. But if you have 5 or 10 people and you want to have one message go out, I'll give you a really good example, and it's not in here, is Gary Schlossberg's weekly economic update. That comes on MS Mail. And I don't know if you're on the distribution list, but if you're not, you can just call him or send him an MS Mail and he can add you. And that just gives you a broad brush overview of what's going on in the markets in the last week. And you could take that document in Word. So pretend that that was in that last slide. Go File, Print to WinFax. When that dialog comes up, you could drag your, the CPAs you work with over here on the outbox. And down here in the message, you could say, here's this week's economic update. If I can help any of your clients, let me know. Hit Send, and it's going to send that one document without you doing anything to every CPA and sends your message out. And that, to me, is leverage. I mean, otherwise, I've got to make all these phone calls and do all this stuff, What's that? Yeah. Well, to me, I mean, that's the jugular issue, and that is we have to do so many different things. It's like, should I market or should I do deals? Or the answer is do both. And how do you do it is things like this. There's a bunch of different ways in WinFax. In fact, I'll touch on this. You can import any kind of file. So if you have an Excel file, you can save it as a DBase file and import it into WinFax. It can bring text files in. So anywhere you have a list, so if someone has a list, like you could save a list out of Roadrunner over to WinFax if you had fax numbers, save it as an Excel file, and then take it into WinFax. Originally, a long time ago, when I first started marketing with WinFax, this is going back a few years, I had a whole group of prospects that I wanted to work with. So you could take like the Dun & Bradstreet $1 million directory, for instance, and I had my wife call them because she was not doing anything at the time. We had a deal, and we were going someplace, and my ex-wife, I should say. So that's a joke. That's a joke. We're still married. And so she called all these businesses and said, can I have your fax number? Can I have your fax number? Can I have your fax number? And we just built the list. And then I had my marketing list, and I did a boatload of deals with those people. It was real powerful. And this is one way. So to get them into WinFax, all different kinds of ways, and that's something that I'm going to leave up to you when you go and learn WinFax to figure out how to get that in. But they give a lot of, the WinFax tutorial is really good. The manual's easy. But that's where you pull that up. The next page, so if I'm sending this fax and I know who I'm sending it to, you'll notice that in this next page I've got that highlighted, and that's a little thumbnail. Thumbnail is just a small representation of some applications. So you can take anything you can bring up on a screen on your laptop, you can fax exactly as it looks off of a fax machine. And I would recommend goofing around with it in your office. So if you have 2 fax lines, plug it in the wall and send some stuff to yourself just to make sure you're getting it right. But these are little application thumbnails. And you'll notice over here where I have all these. So what I have are little files. Line only, SBA with TIs, SBA construction, loan line, SBA 7A. And so I've got it all pre-formatted. So when I'm going to send something, I just take a little file and throw it in the attachment box, and they have everything they need. Yeah. Right. Well, yeah. What I'll do is one fax, and you'll see some examples in here. I don't think this next one. No. If you go back to staging, or maybe it's under communication, we may get to it. I don't know exactly where I put that example in, but it's like, for instance, when I want to communicate with an entire branch, I'll put the branch name in where the company is. So in the CPA firm, you have the firm name, and instead of a person's name, I put managing partner, and then down in the message body in the send box. Down in the message body here, I'll put, hi, rather than address it to a specific person. I'll just say, hi, can you please distribute this to the entire firm? So if you know it's CPA firms, you could say, can you please distribute to the whole firm that way? And that's really where I would have to leave it up to you on a case-by-case basis. For instance, when I work with farm lists, the names are always screwy. The names are never right. They're truncated, or they have someone like, A and Z partnership without a person's name. And so if I know that they're SBA 7A loans, for instance, what I would do is, dear SBA 7A holder, you're just going to have to figure out some ways where across the board it would work. Some other label other than their name that won't make them mad. Next slide, which actually isn't, I don't think the next slide in yours, is an actual fax. Looks like an output. It's one of those checklists. Oh, by the way, I need a few things. And that's a cover page that I have. I'll be happy to MS mail it to you guys. It's got all the, legalese, gobbledygook. If this was sent to you in error, please let me know. Otherwise, we'll stick our attorneys on you. It's got the confidential stamp logo. If you'll jump forward one more page. Oh, yeah, you're on that page. What that shows is just there are tons of different cover pages in WinFax. I've got one that I use primarily for Wells Fargo. It's my Wells Fargo cover page. And that's the one that whenever I fill anything, I know that's the cover page it's going. But then they have all the goofy ones, the oops and checks in the mail type stuff. And then lastly, I think the most powerful thing that we talked about other than faxing is